We are a divided nation. We need help, and we need the border war back. We need it back.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to what is not the Big 12 or the SEC podcast.
What?
Welcome everyone back to HoopsHD.
We can still talk about the border war, can't we?
We could talk about the civil conflict. You could talk about the Apple Bowl, not the border war. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood. Joining me, John Titel, John Salika, and David Griggs again for our Pac-12 preseason podcast. This is the podcast where we will be talking about everything we expect from the Pac-12 this season and a little bit of a review of what happened last year. Let me start with you, though, John T. You are our Pac-12 guru. Has the Pac-12 now fully recovered from the days of two bids and automatic and regular season champion not even making the field of 68?
No doubt. I mean, this used to just be Arizona, UCLA, and a bunch of other teams. Now, I think that you're getting teams that are legitimate contenders like Colorado and Utah, and you can't count out these newbies like California and Oregon State, maybe Stanford, maybe return to prominence. Like this conference is pretty loaded, I think, from top to bottom.
Okay. We say that, but John, let me stick with you for a second here. Last year, actually, the Pac-12 set a conference record with 7 teams in the NCAA tournament. That was the most ever. Obviously, they used to be the Pac-10, and before that, the Pac-8. All 7 of those teams lost to lower-seeded teams. Your Arizona Wildcats, among them losing the first round, along with Cal, Oregon State, Colorado, and USC. All were wearing white, all lost. Utah lost to an 11-seed Gonzaga in the second round. Oregon was a 1-seed, lost to a 2-seed. Not that as big of an upset, but wasn't a pretty disappointing year when you include what happened in the NCAA tournament?
It was. That's a nice stat of the day to start us off early with. Getting a little shocker right to the Wildcats. Yeah, it was not their year. I mean, the Ducks did the conference proud. I really didn't think that they were going to go as far as they did. I believe they made it to the Elite 8 before losing to the Sooners after not being on – I mean, they were on people's radar, and they had a good team and a good coach, but to go that far and be a 1-seed was amazing. Yeah, certainly it's great to get 7 teams in regardless of what conference you're in, but to have you keep losing over and over to worse teams – I mean, if you're an 7 or 8 seed, I get it. But, yeah, they definitely need to keep going. I don't think they're happy to make it and then lose.
Yeah, and I mean, in their defense – Oregon State was a 7 seed. Colorado and USC were both 8 seeds when they lost in the first round, but still a couple, teams like Cal as a 4 seed losing to Hawaii and Utah losing to Gonzaga. Stalika, any thoughts on the Pac-12's last season at least?
Well, I was going to say, given how the ACC performed last year, should we at least give Oregon a little credit for beating Duke in the Sweet 16, even though that's the game they're quote-unquote expected to win?
They were better than Duke. So I give them credit for being better than Duke, but, it wasn't a surprise that they beat them, at least not to me.
Well, David, let me stick with you here for a second because we've been just discussing Oregon last year. Let's turn to this season. I've actually seen at least one preseason preview that called Oregon the number 1 team in the nation heading into this season. I don't necessarily agree with that, but
no.
How good is this Oregon team going to be this year?
Very good, better than they were a year ago, and they were pretty good last year. I think
they were a 1 seed.
Yeah, they were a 1 seed. They won the Pac-12 regular season. They won the Pac-12 tournament. They advanced to the Elite 8, and they have, I think, 6 of their top 7 players back. They add a pretty good recruiting class to that. They're going to be better than they were a year ago if they stay healthy. They're very good. I think they're the best team in this conference. One of the problems that I had with a lot of the individual teams last year, although the league itself was much improved, I thought that it was full of kind of home court heroes, and you may recall that we predicted a lot of those upsets, but I don't think Oregon is this year. I think they are capable of winning on the road, and they will win on the road in this league, and I think that I don't even think it's up for debate. There's nobody I look at that I think is anywhere close to as good as they are.
Well, John T., this Oregon team has depth at the guard position, guys like Benson and Ennis, Dorsey, freshman Peyton Pritchard, depth down low with Chris Boucher, Jordan Bell, more guys like that, plus Dylan Brooks, assuming he's healthy. I know he had an off-season surgery. Is there a weakness here in Oregon?
Certainly not guys named Dylan between the transfer Ennis from Villanova and Brooks, the star from last year, although I think the injury is serious. I don't see him coming out healthy by game one, hopefully by January, but I don't know what the timetable is. You also shouldn't sleep on Cavell Bigby Williams, the 2016 National Junior College Player of the Year. I believe he will be a junior forward. I don't think he's going to put up like a double-double or anything, but he's going to give them huge size inside next to Chris Boucher. We have a nice Twin Towers angle going on there.
Yeah, this team could be blocking shots left and right with what they've got down low. Stalika, do you think Oregon wins the Pac-12, or do you think there's somebody else that's going to give them a challenge?
I think they have a chance to win the Pac-12 and also have another shot at repeating as a 1 seed when I look at their schedule, because they have a game at Baylor as part of the tip-off marathon. They host Valpo again, and they're also going to be in the Maui tournament with Georgetown, Tennessee, and Wisconsin on their side. And they also have home games against Alabama, Boise State that aren't going to be easy, and also a game against UNLV at T-Mobile Arena, if I'm not mistaken.
Baylor and Oregon, an optometry nightmare. Bright, ridiculous uniforms that can be seen from outer space.
I think you're going to wear sunglasses while you watch that game.
Yes, I advise it.
But John T., let me head back to you here. If somebody's going to challenge Oregon in the Pac-12, who do you think the next best team is? Or maybe you think of the best team. Maybe you think Oregon's coming in second. I didn't get you guess that question.
No, I think it's fair to give the reigning champs the nod. As much as I want to say the Wildcats, I really think this UCLA team is going to be amazing. So they finished the year with a great backcourt, the three-headed monster of Bryce Alford, the coach's son, Isaac Hamilton, and Aaron Holiday. To that, they add a McDonald's All-American, Lonzo Ball, who might become the best point guard in the Pac-12 as a freshman. And even though I thought he was the best guy, if you saw the exhibition win over Masters University the other night, but who didn't, TJ Leaf, their other McDonald's All-American, the power forward, 19 points and 12 boards in only 20 minutes. Yes, it's Masters. Yes, it's an exhibition. But this team could have a great starting five. Not sure about the depth, but I think they can play with anyone in the conference.
Well, and then you wonder about a guy like Prince Ali, who came in last year, who was supposed to be everything and was pretty much nothing. Can a guy like that bounce back and really add to that depth that you're concerned about?
Certainly he can. And then I didn't even mention Thomas Welsh, who could be the best center in the conference. I mean, they have a lot of great pieces. I think that as much as I hate to pick teams that rely on freshmen, and they don't have to because they have guys like Alford, I believe Welsh is a junior, but if Lonzo Ball and TJ Leaf can really come in quickly and adapt to the college game and contribute, I think they both might be starting, if not in game one, at least soon after. They can really push this team from good to great.
David, I believe that the story was that after the end of the season last year, there was somebody that rented a banner plane and was flying it over Pauley Pavilion with a banner that read "Fire Steve Alford." After a sub 500 year with all that talent,
was flying it over Pauley Pavilion. Well, it was after the season, so presumably no one was there. But even if people were there, there's a roof on the building. Nice going, moron.
But seriously though, I mean, could coaching be the biggest problem here at UCLA this year?
I don't think so. I mean, Steve Alford is not what I would call a great coach. He's no one that I get, super excited about. He's no Tim Miles. I'll put it that way. But what has he ever done that was bad? I mean, he did okay at Iowa. They had some pretty good teams. Although New Mexico never could make it past the round of 32, he had some good teams there. I mean, he's not a bad coach. I'm not going to sit here and argue that he's as good as some other coaches, but to say that he alone is the problem, I don't think that's it. But I've never been as much of an Alford hater as most of the rest of us, I think.
Don't forget what he did at what was then Southwest Missouri State.
Yeah, SMS. Probably, I don't think he's ever been deeper in the tournament than that Sweet 16.
Well, Stalika, let me get your thoughts here on this UCLA team. Do you think they're the second best team in the conference, or do you think there could be a carryover effect from whatever did go wrong last year?
Well, it seems like we have this question about UCLA more years than not, although I still think the team up the road in Berkeley also has a chance at possibly finishing second as well. Now, as far as what UCLA has out of their non-conference schedule, they're going to be part of the Wooden Legacy this year. So their side of the bracket features Portland, Dayton, and the Puppets' favorite team in Nebraska. But they also have a stiff test at Kentucky, a home game against Michigan, and another game against Ohio State at the T-Mobile Arena in Vegas. That's not going to be a cakewalk either.
John, you just kind of surprised me a little bit by mentioning Cal as a contender for second place in this conference. Is that where you went? We're going with them. And now, I will agree with you that Ivan Rabb's decision to come back to school for another year was one of the most shocking, I think, in the offseason, and gives Cal a shot there. But why do you think they're that good?
Because I also look at some of the other turnover at places like Utah, Colorado, USC, Oregon State. Because I think Cal will probably have the best raw talent, even though they had a disappointing NCAA tournament. But then again, who didn't in the Pac-12?
David, you want to join him on the Cal bandwagon for that?
Not for a second. No, I was thinking they were fringe bubble. I was thinking their tournament chances were somewhat realistic. I wasn't thinking second in the league. I do like Quanzo Martin, but not that much.
Well, Tytel, let me ask you quickly about this Cal team here. They do have a pair of 7-footers, so they got the size. They have Ivan Rabb. They have Jabari Bird, who now as a senior is going to be asked to step up and become a leader. Where are you looking at them finishing in the conference?
I don't think they're going to win it all. I think they can definitely be among the top 4. Not sure how they compare to UCLA and Arizona. Losing Jaylen Brown is obviously a huge crushing blow. He was the 3rd overall pick. If he comes back, I think they're a legitimate top 5 in the nation team. He's that good. Rabb has a lot of help. There are a bunch of senior guards on this team. The schedule is also very interesting. So they don't have a single non-conference true road game, but 3 of their neutral site games are against top 50 teams. So I don't know how that's going to help set up the conference schedule, because obviously neutral site is better than home in terms of preparing your guys for life on the road. But it's one thing to go into a hostile Poly Pavilion or McHale Center. So I'm wondering how that's going to affect them.
Yeah, those neutral site games, San Diego State, Princeton, and Seton Hall. Also the home game, which was a return from last year's home and home against Virginia. The rest of the schedule is a little bit on the light side. But let me stick with you here, Tytel, for a second. The team that we have not yet discussed, which I'm almost shocked we haven't discussed yet in a Pac-12 podcast, is your Wildcats. And where are you projecting them this year, and just how good are they? How good are they going to be?
So it's the timeliness of this question. Had you asked me this 48 hours ago, I would have said I think they're going to be second best to Oregon in the conference. Now I'm leaning closer to 3rd or 4th behind UCLA and Cal due to recent events. So they had the exhibition, I believe, yesterday against the notorious College of Idaho. It killed 3 of their players. So Alonzo Trier missed the game for unspecified reasons and is out for an unspecified time. Chance Comanche missed the game because he's suspended indefinitely for academics, and Ray Smith had a serious leg injury during the game. And not that those are the 3 best players on the team, but you knock out 3 guys from your rotation literally in like 2 hours. I mean, it was really, really a painful experience for a Wildcat fan. I don't know how long it's going to take to get over it. The good news, Superfrost Laurie Markkinen, the 7-footer who's coming over from Scandinavia, great start, 8 points, 10 boards in 27 minutes. Again, an exhibition, but he's a legit 7-footer, but he doesn't just play back to the basket. He can step outside. He might be a one and done. He was great this summer playing in Europe. I really think he could save the season from a, God forbid, missing the tourney to like making the Sweet 16, maybe.
John, can I ask a quick question? Is this a tactic Sean Miller has used before, these indefinite suspensions before the season really gets started, to kind of – I know some coaches really do that to kind of shake their team awake and get their attention. Has he done this before that you know of? Or is this an actual locker room problem?
No, I mean, I think he has maybe, but the sad thing is it hasn't worked, as he and Mark Few are going head-to-head for best coach to never make the Final Four so far. The schedule is also interesting. 3 top 30 teams in non-conference play. So if there's any team that can't afford to be shorthanded early, it's the Wildcats.
Chad, can we get Sean Miller on the phone, please? Trying to clear up what's going on.
We'll work on that. But I just wanted to comment. First of all, I did not hear about that Ray Smith injury. This is a guy that's coming off of knee surgeries on both his knees over the last couple of years, and that doesn't sound very good at all if he's going down again just in an exhibition game. But John T, let me ask you one other question. I think the biggest hit Arizona may have taken was even a couple months ago when they thought that Terrence Ferguson was coming to the team, and instead he decided to turn pro, go overseas. This could have been a national championship contender with him. Do you think?
Strong.
Rub it in.
Sorry, I don't.
Strong words. I mean, I've heard he was that good. He was a 5-star player, and I mean, maybe. Sadly, we don't have to worry about it because we'll never know because he bailed on us. But yeah, he's gonna hurt.
Well, in Joby's word, he must suck then, right?
Yeah.
Salika, let me just get your thoughts on Arizona before we move on, and where you think they do finish since you have Cal rated so highly.
I would probably say Arizona is going to finish third, but as John T also pointed out, they're also going to have some decent games out of conference. They're going to be in one of probably 50 or 60 different exempt events in Vegas, although their opener against Santa Clara is going to have a little intrigue, but the second game against Butler or Vandy should also be competitive. They also have a neutral court game against Gonzaga, which I think is in Los Angeles, if I'm not mistaken, and also a game against Texas A&M, which is going to be played in Houston. About the only real cupcake I see on here is going to be Missouri on the road.
Oh, you have not even mentioned their home game on December 14th against the Lopes.
Oh, yes, Grand Canyon. Good to see that ban is no longer in effect by the Pac-12.
David, is there anyone else you're looking at that has a shot at finishing in the top 4 or so in the Pac-12?
There is, and it's the team I'm looking at that I'm always looking at, and I say every year, and when they're good, I'm right, and when they're not, we go back and delete it from the podcast.
I might be agreeing with you this year. Go ahead, though.
Well, you know who it is. It's Colorado. Yeah, I think that I always seem to love this team. If I always pick them as my dark horse, but at what point are they no longer a dark horse? I think they've got a lot more talent than they've had. I know that they're a little light in the front court, but their back court is really deep. I think they're going to be good. Not Oregon good, not protected seed good, but very, very safely in the bubble and maybe in the top 4 of the conference.
Yeah, Xavier Johnson may help down low there. Not having Josh Scott's going to hurt. I think you got to keep a look on this kid, Derek White. He was one of the top D2 players in the nation. Now moving up to D1. Could be interesting. But John T, what is your thoughts on this Colorado team?
I think you're underselling the importance of Xavier Johnson, if that's possible. I think he is going to be a huge addition after missing last year with the torn Achilles. Senior leadership. He's a rangy, stretchy guy, as Phyllis would say. He can play the 2 or the 3. And as David said, the backcourt is set with King and Fortune and Collier, veteran guys who can score. They also have Wesley Gordon at the power forward spot in the 4, who has produced in the past. The schedule's not too bad. I believe they have some little team named Xavier on it, but Tad Boyle should be able to get this team back to the tourney.
Well, your team was just mentioned there, Stalika. Your thoughts on Colorado and whether or not they're a tournament team?
You better watch out.
Well, Xavier is going to be a big home game for them, but there's also some actual road games on here that will test Colorado a bit. Portland, I'm not sure about, but BYU, Air Force, Front Range games are never easy. There is one non-D1 game against Fort Hays State, but there's also enough meat on Colorado's schedule. And let's not forget Notre Dame and either Texas or Northwestern in Brooklyn. So I can give Colorado credit for scheduling up this year.
John S., let me stick with you for a second here. We have not yet mentioned a team that was a 3 seed in last year's tournament, that being Utah. They taken a step back this year? Do you think they get back to the tournament? What are you looking for with them?
Well, if they still had Jacob Podol here, I think I would like their chances a lot more. Although Utah is another team that's really going to be starting in the shallow end this year. Northwest Nazarene, Concordia, they finally move up to Division I competition against Coppin State and Riverside. But a pair of Big East. Yeah, they have a pair of Big East teams on their schedule. Butler, Xavier on the road, but they'll also be part of the Diamond Head Invitational around Christmas time. Although San Francisco, Illinois State, and Hawaii, not exactly the biggest competition, but Hawaii can never be overlooked in their own tournament.
How many count the number of new players on Utah's team this year? It's like 9 or 10. The new team is everybody, and like, golly.
Yeah,
And
David,
I haven't even mentioned one team on their schedule that's going to be taking a 1-year hiatus.
Well, yeah, BYU. Too intense. They needed to schedule Nazarene. Good job, Utah.
yeah, that's a pretty painful one. But David, one guy that Utah does have coming in this year for the second semester is David Collette, who had a little bit of trouble getting out of Utah State last year at the last minute. But do you think a guy like him added to the 2 players that they have back from last year will be enough to make this into a tournament team?
It's too hard to say. What a show. It's so unfortunate they're not playing at Utah State this year because it would be spectacular. But, yeah, I don't really know. I mean, he certainly brings them something, but to say because they have David Collette, they're a tournament team, I can't quite get there. I don't know. I think they're fringe tournament at best. If I'm gonna butcher if Coach Larry, I'm gonna butcher his last
name.
Yeah, Kristaliak gets them to the NCAA tournament. It would be, in my opinion, an even better coaching job than he did the last 2 years.
John T, do you agree with him that this would be an incredible coaching job to put this Utah team back in, coming off of a 3 seed last year?
Yes. I mean, they're easing into the season with Northwest Nazarene, Concordia, and Coppin State. And then apparently they're joining the Big East with a 2-week stretch that includes Butler and Xavier. You cannot lose a 7-footer to the lottery and expect to get back to a 3 seed. I think it's going to be a down year relatively for the Utes.
And I agree with you. I don't even think Utah makes the field this year. I think it's a stretch. But John T, let me stick with you here for another team that was in the tournament last year, and that's USC. Did lose 6 players via transfers or NBA draft declaring in the offseason. Any chance
really that bad?
Any chance that Andy Enfield gets this team back in the field again?
Yes, but it's going to be for the 2018 tourney. I think they're just a year away. Solid backcourt of juniors Jordan McLaughlin and Elijah Stewart. Benny Boatwright's a sophomore up front. So assuming that none of those guys jump ship in the offseason and they bring them all back, I think next year this team is not banking for the tourney, but looking great. This year, I think they're just a little young because of losing all those guys.
David, were you impressed by what Andy Enfield actually did by getting the team in the field last year? Because I think we were kind of down on him heading into the season.
More than impressed, surprised. Now, again, you watch the team play all year long, and then by December you have pinpointed them as a tournament caliber team. But at this point, a year ago, I would have been shocked had you told me they were going to end up that good. In my opinion, they were one of the bigger surprises in all of college basketball. Not because they were so, unbelievably awesome, but because we all just thought they were going to be so bad.
Yeah, I mean, it was only a 9-9 in the Pac-12, 21-12 overall heading into the NCAA, but enough to be a bubble team that made it in. Stalika, your thoughts on USC heading into this year?
Well, one of the impressive things they had last year was getting a 3-game sweep of UCLA. It was the first time in 70-some-odd years, but that's not going to happen this year. Not when you're losing guys to Marquette and Lord knows who else. But, I mean, they're not going to have, the same type of exempt tournament they had last year to really help land on the front page. But they still have games against Texas A&M on the road, SMU, at San Diego State, at San Diego, and then BYU on a neutral floor. And then they have another Las Vegas tournament against Missouri State in either DePaul or Wyoming.
Yeah, at San Diego, I wouldn't worry about that too much. But David, one other team that was in the field last year, Oregon State, and I don't think we could have been more overwhelmed by the coaching job that was done there, getting that team in for the first time since the early 90s. Wayne Tinkle, amazing job last year with Oregon State. Do you think he brings it back again this season?
No, but I think they're better. I think they'll be better than what most people are forecasting. I guess we'll just leave it at that. I think that they lost They return enough to be competitive. I don't think that they're NCAA tournament caliber good, but I do think that they're relevant. Again, this program is no longer a doormat, and his overall body of work as far as how he's built them up has been amazing.
Yeah, and Titel, Gary Payne the second's gone. And I think that's a huge blow.
Yeah.
But you got to Trey Tinkle, his son, and Stephen Thompson Jr. are only sophomores this year. This could be a long stretch here of good basketball coming out of Oregon State if he can keep building this.
Well put. As big a loss as Jakob Poeltl is, Peyton might be even more just because he did everything for the team. They're going to miss him sorely. And like you said, great sophomore class, so they might be 1 or 2 years away. But not the present's average. The future looks bright.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Stalika, you want to say that Oregon State's going to make the field this year, or you're not quite there either?
Well, let's just hope they don't have another tripping incident that was actually more egregious than what Grayson Allen had put together. That's another story.
It is. I think. Well, we'll talk about that on another day. It was funny though. Inappropriate, but funny.
Let me go. Let me stick with you here for Salika. One other team that I think is going to be in the running for a tournament bid here, and that's a Stanford team. A lot of last year's team back. Roscoe Allen not back. Jared Haas coming in over from UAB. Do you think that Stanford can be a tournament team in his first season?
Well, Stanford showed some flashes of brilliance last year, but they just weren't consistent enough. I mean, they had quality wins, but they didn't really have the quantity last year because I think they were one of the few teams that were able to actually beat Oregon during the conference last year. But it seemed like for every Oregon they would beat, there would be a Colorado that would come into Maples Pavilion and knock them off. But I still think there's going to be some improvement over what seemed to be perpetual 500 teams under Johnny Dawkins.
Titel, do you think this is another 500 team, or do you think that they can take that step up in the first season with Haas?
I don't love first-year coaches, so based on that, I'm leaning no. I think the key is going to be Reed Travis, former McDonald's All-American, missed most of last season with a stress fracture. I believe he's healthy. Also, they better get it right early because it is going to be a brutal non-conference play, a 3-game stretch. Miami, St. Mary's, and Kansas. Good luck.
Ouch. Ouch. David.
So after they start off 0-3, well, none of those losses are really going to hurt them. But no, I don't think they're a tournament team. I'm not with you on that. I don't think Jared Haas can improve them from 500 all the way to inside the bubble.
Well, it's not just Miami. There's also going to be 2 other games that are part of the Advocare tournament this year. Indiana State and Iowa State will be their second game, and I don't have the other 4 teams in front of me right now. It shouldn't be quite the group of death that it was last year, but you just never know.
Yeah, but it is a tough schedule. They've also got a trip to SMU in that schedule as well. A neutral court game against Harvard. However, with that type of a schedule, if they can pick up a few wins, if they can be a 500 team or 2 games over 500 in the Pac-12, I think that they are going to be right there in the discussion. But let's move on to the bottom of the Pac-12. And Titel, I know you want to do this, so I'm going to turn it over to you first. For your other team from the state of Arizona, any chance they make any noise this year? I
mean, the only other team in Arizona is Grand Canyon, right? I didn't know there was a third.
Northern Arizona.
Thank you. So the Sun Devils will be average at best, I think. They don't bring back a ton of guys. They have a great backcourt of Shannon Evans and Trey Holder. The problem is that the good news is they're both juniors. The bad news is they're both point guards. I actually had the privilege of interviewing Evans several hours ago, and he thinks that they complement each other and can make the right play at the right time, as you'll see in an interview coming later this month. I don't know how it works because it just seems like too many people for one position. That being said, if you could get anybody on the planet to coach a college point guard, who else would you want than Bobby Hurley?
Exactly. David, how about one of your favorite coaches up there in Washington? What do you think about Lorenzo Romar's team this season?
They were not good last year, and I look for him to continue that into this year.
Well, I wouldn't sleep on Washington, to be honest with you. they are going to have one of the more talented freshmen coming in Markelle Fultz. I remember Xavier was also hard on the recruiting trail for him, but ultimately lost out to the Huskies.
Stalika, this is a team that I think was in the NIT, I think 19 and 15 last year, and had a pair of first-round draft picks on it. Isn't there something wrong with that?
That's the coach.
No, nothing wrong as far as developing talent for the pros, but sure, having some returning talent would also be a plus. But I don't think Fultz is going to be quite the bust that Ben Simmons has been made out to be for LSU, because at the same time, Washington doesn't have the expectations that LSU did, but I still think they can be a surprise in the Pac-12 this year.
Taitel, I think you want to make a comment here on this Washington team.
Two quickies. Number one, echoing John, Markelle Fultz is the real deal. He might be the number one pick in next summer's draft. So keep an eye on him, and especially after losing Chris and Murray for the first round of the NBA draft, he might get the ball in his hands the entire time. He might score 20 a game. Additionally, they're a very young team hosting a NCAA tournament winning Ivy League team. I don't think anybody's ever said that. Yale comes to Seattle for the season opener, so they better be awake and aware, because that could quickly turn into a loss for the Huskies.
David, let me go back to you with one last team here. The only team we haven't discussed yet is Washington State. Is this your last place team?
Yeah. Ernie Kent's making them better. Now, I know they lost their last, I think it was 17 games that last year. But before that, yeah, they're going to be pretty bad.
But Stalika, Eddie, do you want to make a case for any of these last three teams here we discussed? I know you made a little bit one for Washington, but for either Arizona State or Washington State being some type of bubble contender.
Bubble contender.
I just got to give it a chance.
I think the Crickets have said enough for me.
John T., how about Washington State? You got anything for us on them?
So Josh Hawkinson could average a double-double for the second straight year in a major conference, and nobody knows about him because he ain't going anywhere near the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, it's going to be a rough year. They did lose. They actually won their second Pac-12 of the game of the year last year, beating UCLA at home. Did not win another game after that for the rest of the season, finishing on a 17-game losing streak, including the Pac-12 conference tournament. But on that note, I want to run through each of you here and ask you how many teams you feel are going to make the big dance out of the Pac-12. I think we were kind of unanimous on Oregon winning it, but David, let me start with you.
I think we see 5 teams in.
5 teams in. Stalika.
I am also going to go ahead and say 5, because I'm going to go with Oregon, Arizona, UCLA, Cal, and I'm going to go ahead with Washington as my surprise team this year out of the Pac-12.
You did want to really make that case for Washington. Okay, wow. Taitel, how many teams do you have in? Who would they be?
I'm setting the over-under at 5.5. I'll give you the Ducks, the Wildcats, the Bruins, and the Bears. As far as my 5th team, I guess Colorado, just because I like Boyle, because he gets his team to the tournament a lot. As far as a surprise, I don't think it's going to be Washington, so I'll stick with 5. But I wonder if Stanford can somehow work some magic. I don't think so, so I'll stick with 5. But I wouldn't be overly surprised if Stanford can sneak in somehow.
And that's exactly what I agree with you 100% there. Actually, those are my 5 to make it. With Stanford being, if they get a 6th, that's the team I would look at. But on that note, I want to thank everybody for joining us for our Pac-12 preview. We'll be back again with our Big Ten preview very shortly. We've got a few more previews coming up later on this week. Thanks again for joining us.